I chose to do a digital project on a 2D motion graphic film based on the issue of Auckland transport. I used a vast array of complex skills, and it took numerous months to create my final product. The skills that were used in creating my final product can be broken up into 4 core elements, including skill development, asset development, animation, and sound design. Before I could really start working on my motion graphic film, I had to make sure that I had some basic knowledge to begin my journey. This was done by watching many YouTube tutorials on the basics of a motion graphic film, which would then be applied to my final product. Gaining some skills before starting proved to be efficient, as it made it easier to create my assets and at also same time leading up towards my final product. I also wrote a script on Auckland transport showcasing the problems and issues. I took time to ensure that the script had accurate statistics and valid information before moving on to the next stage. This was essential as it allowed me to create assets based on my scripture, ready to animate, leading towards my final product. I also storyboarded each scene and then created every asset for the animation individually using Adobe Illustrator. I often sketched beforehand to create a general idea of each design before translating these ideas digitally to the computer. Intricate tools including the pen tool, the direct selection tool, the eyedropper tool, and the pathfinder tool were used to create accurate and aesthetic designs. After creating each design, they would then be separated into separate layers and imported into After Effects for the animation stage. The animation in most assets was done by using the Direction Select tool to move the anchor point of each layer and then creating keyframes for parameters such as the scale, rotation, and position of each layer. I had to make sure that every keyframe is done to perfection, because one wrong keyframe can determine the quality of the animation, and it's important to capture the motion inside the movements and consider the flow. The next stage was to import my After Effects compositions into Adobe Premiere. Each composition was placed into a final composition to make it easier when I exported them into Adobe Premiere. I moved each scene around to fit my script and added basic transitions from one scene to the other using parameters. This was a fairly simple step as I already created my scenes in order. An important thing to note is that I constantly saved my data each time I did something different so that I wouldn't lose progress of my animation. After completing the step, I exported my Adobe After Effects composition into Adobe Premiere, which would then allow me to add sound effects and audio later on. I used GarageBand to record my script because it works and was free. It took less than an hour to record my voice and tweak it to make sure that it was suitable to put on my video. I made sure that my voiceover was flush with my scenes so that it would emphasize my film even more. I used different tools in Adobe Premiere such as the pen tool to increase or decrease the volume of my voice. This was very helpful as it allowed me to make the necessary changes to my voice to give a more impactful video. After configuring my voiceover with my scenes, I was able to then add the final touches, which are my sound effects. As there was very little time until the end, I ended up using sound effects from Envato Elements. Envato Elements was a very useful website as it allowed me to get background music and sound effects for my video. I downloaded certain sound effects that I wanted in my video to an MP3 file, which made it easier to then import into Adobe Premiere. I also made sure that my sound effects were not random, but appropriate to my topic and to the video. After playing around with my sound effects and putting them in the right places, I then rendered my whole video to an MP4 file. I did this because it is easier to view and share via an MP4, as you only need to play it. Here is a snippet of my video if you have not already seen it. This project was well worth the journey, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa.